Welcome to Health Science Essentials. This is where we revisit science-based, time-tested, and practical advice to help you enhance your mental, physical, and emotional well-being. I'm Dr. Eric Lawson, a researcher and educator in the field of neuroscience and human performance. And today, I'm joined by a distinguished expert, Dr. Michael Reed. Dr. Reed, I've been following your scientific work for years, and it's truly an honor to have this opportunity to speak with you. Thank you, I'm glad to be here. Let's begin with a simple but important question. What exactly qualifies a compound to be called a psychedelic? Dr. Michael Reed explains that the term psychedelic is not just a chemical label, it refers to a class of substances that can deeply alter a person's mental and emotional experience, to the point where their inner world and perception of external reality take on entirely new forms. Main types of psychedelics. Classic psychedelics. LSD. Psilocybin, found in certain mushrooms. DMT. Mescaline. These typically fall into two chemical structures, tryptamines and phenethylamines. They primarily act on serotonin 2A receptors, which are deeply involved in thought, emotion, and perception, often reshaping how a person understands themselves and the world around them. NMDA antagonists. Ketamine. PCP. Dextromethorphan, a compound found in cough syrup. MDMA. This is often categorized separately and referred to as an entactogen or empathogen, because it connects individuals to their inner emotions and enhances empathy toward others. Psychedelics and mental models. Dr. Reed explains that the human brain operates like a prediction machine. We constantly interpret the world based on pre-built mental models. When someone takes a psychedelic substance, those established models begin to dissolve, opening the door to entirely new perspectives. Sometimes, people may even feel like they can fly, though this is extremely rare. Most experiences, however, lead to deeper awareness of the self, greater emotional insight, and a profound reconnection with past experiences and feelings. Dr. Eric Lawson. Dr. Reed, I've heard some pretty fascinating stories from clinical trials involving psychedelics. One that stood out was about a research volunteer who genuinely seemed to believe she could dive through a painting on the wall. Thankfully, she was fine, but watching the video later, it was clear she truly thought that wall was a gateway to another dimension. Dr. Michael Reed. Yes, and that really highlights how psychedelics can disrupt our normal prediction systems. That's why your question earlier was so important. Given the wide range of psychedelic substances, like LSD and psilocybin, and the variety of personal backgrounds people bring to the experience, identifying some universal patterns is incredibly helpful, especially for those who are completely new to this. Dr. Lawson. Exactly. And many of these substances, especially the classic psychedelics like LSD and psilocybin, are known to interact with the serotonin system. Could you walk us through how that works at a general level? Why would stimulating certain serotonin receptors lead to such a profound shift in perception and mental models? Dr. Reed. That's a great question. While we're still actively exploring this area, we do know a fair bit about receptor-level pharmacology. For example, we know that these substances primarily activate the serotonin 2A receptors. But it's not as simple as serotonin alone causing these effects, otherwise, eating a bagel or some turkey, which increases serotonin, would send us all on psychedelic trips. Dr. Lawson. Right. From what I understand, serotonin tends to bring the brain and body into a state of calm or contentment in the present moment. Whereas dopamine gears us more toward action and future possibilities, toward what's out there. Dr. Reed. That's consistent with what I've seen too. And while I don't primarily identify as a neuroscientist, I can definitely say that at the intersection of neuroscience and experience, psychedelics interface with our brain systems in very unique ways. Dr. Lawson. Let's explore the clinical side for a moment. If someone were interested in participating in one of your clinical trials at Johns Hopkins, would they need to have a diagnosed condition, like depression, Or could they be healthy and simply curious? Dr. Reed. Actually, we've done both. Some of our studies focus on clinical populations, like those with depression, anxiety, or addiction. But we've also run trials with what we call healthy normals. Even without a formal diagnosis, participants can have deeply meaningful and even transformative experiences. Because let's face it, we're all human, and everyone has some emotional material beneath the surface. Dr. Lawson. That's powerful. So, let's say someone qualifies for a study. What's the process like before they actually take the psychedelic? Dr. Reed. It starts with a detailed screening, psychiatric interviews that cover a person's history and current symptoms, based on the DSM criteria. We screen for things like psychotic disorders, schizophrenia, or the manic side of bipolar disorder, conditions that would disqualify someone because of increased risk. We also do cardiovascular screening to make sure there are no underlying heart issues. Once someone clears the screening, we move into preparation. This includes multiple sessions where the participant builds trust and therapeutic rapport with the guides who will be with them during the experience. It's crucial they feel safe and supported. At the same time, we educate them about what the psychedelic experience might be like. And we don't sugarcoat it, these substances are known for their variability. You might have the most beautiful, life-changing experience, or the most challenging one. We lay it all out so there are no surprises. Dr. Lawson. That's so important. I think people really need to hear that, because there's no way to predict exactly how a person will respond once they're in that altered state. Dr. Reed. Exactly. Set and setting, mindset, history, and expectations, they all play a role. But proper preparation helps people navigate whatever arises. When someone receives a psychedelic medicine, it's not just a typical drug, it's often a deep, life-changing experience. People often ask, are they eating mushrooms? Or do they take it another way? In most modern studies, participants receive pure psilocybin, usually in capsule form and with carefully measured doses. Typically, this dose is around 20 to 30 milligrams, and the day of the session is set up entirely to support the experience. There's no pressure to perform tasks or take tests. Instead, the focus is on allowing the person to fully go inward, to explore their emotions, memories, and sense of self. Before the session even begins, participants spend time preparing with a trained therapist or guide. The goal is to build trust and safety. They're encouraged to let whatever comes up, come out. That could be crying, laughing, fear, or even silence. Because this isn't just about a trip, this is emotional work. Deep, honest therapy. One of the key parts of the psychedelic journey is learning to let go of control. And that's something we see in all good therapy, trust. Trust in the guide, and over time, trust in oneself. Now you might wonder, how do people go so deep into these experiences? The truth is, in daily life, our brains are trained to multitask and pay attention to everything all at once. But psychedelics flip that, they force you to focus deeply on one feeling, one memory, one moment. And when you do that, even something ordinary becomes extraordinary. Think of it this way, even if you're sober and you stare at the tip of your finger long enough, you start noticing weird little details. But under psychedelics, that effect is magnified. That's why we always make sure people are in a safe, controlled space, because if someone's outside, crossing a busy street, and suddenly feels their hand is the most miraculous thing in the universe, that can be dangerous. So we create a safe container, a place where people are allowed to fully explore without fear. I remember a woman from years ago, mid-session, saying, "Tell me again I can't die, it feels like my heart is going to explode." She was fine physically, just a mild rise in heart rate, but emotionally, it felt very real. And that's important to understand, what they feel is real to them. During these sessions, the mind zooms in on one specific emotion or sensation, maybe sadness, maybe joy, maybe a fear from childhood, or a worry about the future. And the key is when someone goes fully into that experience, without fighting it, something powerful happens. They learn something. They bring something back from that inner world, something that can change how they live in the outer world. And that's where the healing begins. In the world of psychedelics, where human experiences are incredibly diverse, one thing has become crystal clear: these substances can have a powerful, positive impact on mental health, especially depression. But it raises a fascinating question: if everyone's journey is different, then what is the common thread that people seem to take away from these experiences? It's what many experts call letting go, surrendering control, allowing oneself to fully enter a new state of awareness. And this isn't just a philosophical idea. This is neuroscience. This is psychology. This is real. Dr. Eric Lawson explains that the deepest transformation often lies in how a person sees themselves, what psychologists call self-representation. Most people, whether they realize it or not, repeat internal narratives over and over again. I'm a failure. I'm a smoker who can't quit. I'm just a depressed person. These are mental models, deeply ingrained stories that the brain tells itself until they become part of one's identity. But under the influence of a psychedelic, something remarkable can happen. People often find themselves slipping beyond that narrow loop of thought, entering a deeper space within. In that space, the door opens to a new way of seeing, not just the world, but also themselves. It's not just mental, it's physical too. There's a shift in how people feel their bodies, something called interoception, the awareness of inner sensations. And then there's a more subtle shift, the language of identity. The internal voice that says, I am, begins to change. Some people, during these experiences, say things like, I felt like I was dying. But they weren't. It's just the mind shaking off its old layers, waking up. Dr. Lawson recalls working with cancer patients who were overwhelmed with hopelessness or with smokers who had tried and failed countless times to quit. And when psychedelic therapy truly worked, one thing became clear: their view of themselves had changed. One participant said something unforgettable. It was like flipping a switch. I just decided, I'm not going to smoke anymore. These moments are what Dr. Lawson calls, moments, simple truths that people may have heard 1,000 times before, but for the first time, they truly feel it in their core. Like one cancer patient realizing, I can't control my illness, but I can still choose to live. I can sit in the sun, laugh with my grandkids, and go outside. That's my choice. That's the real gift of a psychedelic experience, the return of agency. The power to choose. The power to become. Because when you tell a depressed person, you're not a failure, it often sounds hollow. But in a deeply altered state of consciousness, that message can come not from someone else but from within. And that's what makes it stick. That's why MDMA is now being used to treat PTSD, and research on psilocybin is expanding. These substances are showing us that deep emotional trauma, long-held grief, and internal blockages can be reprocessed, not just intellectually, but experientially. And those memories, those patterns, get rewritten in a lasting way. In short, in just a few hours, a person can have an experience so profound that it reshapes how they think, how they feel, and how they live, and that transformation can last. In recent years, psychedelic compounds have shown remarkable success in reducing depression and treating trauma. According to Dr. Eric Lawson, one substance in particular, MDMA, stands out for its unique effects on the brain. Unlike traditional antidepressants, MDMA simultaneously boosts both dopamine and serotonin, two powerful brain chemicals responsible for mood, motivation, and emotional balance. When both rise together, many patients report feeling deeply safe, open, and emotionally connected, sometimes for the first time in years. What makes MDMA especially promising is that it rarely causes what's known as a bad trip. That terrifying experience, where someone feels like their mind is falling apart or reality is dissolving, is far more common with classic psychedelics like LSD or psilocybin. With those, people often say things like, "I didn't know it would be this intense. Please make it stop." Or even, "I feel like I'm dying." These are not just dramatic feelings. In those moments, a person may lose their sense of self, feel disconnected from their body, or think they've gone insane. If they resist the experience rather than surrendering to it, things can spiral. And yet, in that very surrender, something incredible can happen. Many people report a sense of spiritual connection, feeling one with the universe, with nature, or with something greater than themselves. Interestingly, studies show that these deep emotional experiences are often linked to long-term improvements in mental health. Dr. Lawson explains that while we can't yet track surrender in the brain in real time, clinical observations show something very real is happening. Unlike the psychedelic experiments of the past, today's research is being done in universities under rigorous, peer-reviewed conditions. The science is finally catching up, and validating what many have felt for decades. But as promising as these therapies are, they're not without risk, especially for younger people. Let's talk about the two biggest dangers. First, for those with serious mental illnesses like schizophrenia or bipolar mania, psychedelics can be extremely dangerous. These individuals already walk a fragile line with reality, and psychedelics can push them over the edge. Second is the risk of a bad trip, which can happen even to mentally healthy people. If the dosage is too high or the environment is not safe and supportive, anyone can feel trapped, terrified, or completely overwhelmed. Even in well-controlled settings, about 1/3 of participants taking high doses, like 30 milligrams of psilocybin, report moments of intense fear or panic. Ironically, those same individuals often go on to have the most profound, beautiful experiences later in the session. But that doesn't make the fear any less real in the moment. Now, let's turn to something that's become quite popular, microdosing, taking very small amounts of psychedelics regularly to boost mood, focus, or creativity. But does it actually work? According to Dr. Lawson, despite all the buzz, there's no strong scientific evidence that microdosing offers lasting, measurable benefits. In fact, some studies suggest it may impair your ability to judge time accurately, something that could pose real-life risks. In today's fast-paced world, some professionals, especially high-performing CEOs, claim that microdosing psychedelics helps them stay sharp and creative. But according to Dr. Eric Lawson, the research tells a different story. He explains that accurate time perception is crucial in demanding jobs, yet some data suggest that microdosing may actually impair this ability. Participants in studies often report feeling slightly high or mildly impaired, not exactly ideal if you're trying to lead a company or manage complex tasks. In scientific terms, this is called abuse liability, the risk that a substance may cause impairment or be misused. So far, no studies have shown that microdosing leads to increased creativity, better cognitive function, or even lasting improvements in mood. However, there is a catch. Most scientific trials haven't replicated the specific microdosing schedules promoted by advocates like Paul Stamets, who suggest detailed patterns such as take it one day, then skip 2 or 3 days, and repeat for several weeks. Proponents claim that benefits emerge only after several weeks of following these regimens, and interestingly, they say the real improvements are felt on the off days. But again, no rigorous scientific studies have tested these specific protocols. That remains a big unknown. Dr. Lawson offers a personal hypothesis. Based on anecdotes, there may be some antidepressant effect in microdosing. If that turns out to be true, it wouldn't be a game-changer like full-dose psychedelic therapy but rather a better version of traditional antidepressants, like SSRIs or Prozac. He notes that boosting serotonin levels has helped treat depression for decades, going all the way back to the 1950s with tricyclics and MAO inhibitors. So it wouldn't be surprising if subtle stimulation of serotonin receptors, through regular microdosing, offers some antidepressant relief. That, he believes, is the most promising area of exploration. Still, Dr. Lawson's true excitement lies in high-dose treatments, what some call heroic doses. With these, just 1 to 3 sessions of psilocybin or similar substances have shown months-long improvements in depression, addiction recovery, and even emotional healing for patients facing terminal illness. These are profound, lasting effects, and they're what truly set psychedelics apart. But there's another potential breakthrough that Dr. Lawson is exploring: brain injury recovery. We often associate head injuries with sports, but many people, from soldiers to laborers, sustain repetitive brain trauma that leads to long-term cognitive issues. And while it's still early, there are hopeful signs that psychedelics, especially psilocybin, may help in healing the brain. Some former athletes report that psychedelics helped restore their memory and improve brain function. And when we look at animal studies, particularly from researchers like David Olson and Brian Roth, we see that psychedelics may promote neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to repair and reorganize itself. Dr. Lawson believes this might explain why some people experience improvements after repeated head injuries. He's now planning clinical work with retired athletes, such as former UFC fighters, who have suffered repeated brain trauma and now struggle with depression. His team's goal is twofold. Treat the depression that often follows traumatic brain injury. Explore whether psilocybin can improve cognitive function, and even use MRI scans to look for physical changes in the brain, like increases in gray matter. He's quick to acknowledge, this research is in its early stages. Right now, it's a mix of animal data and human anecdotes. But the signs are promising. As Dr. Lawson puts it, we need more tools, not fewer, in our fight against depression and brain trauma. And while psychedelics won't replace everything, they may hold a key to healing, one that science is only just beginning to understand.